coming here, I thought, you know, why did anybody come here in the first place? I don't mean Astoria. I mean to this great country. And my grandparents came at the turn of the century with a lot of other grandparents, a lot of other people who were fleeing places that I did not realize how beautiful they were until I went. I went to Sicily a couple of times, and this is where my parents came from, my grandparents. Beautiful, it's gorgeous. Every place I've gone in the world, to places in Eastern Europe, wherever it is, it's really, why did the people come? It came for a very simple reason. Number one, they were tired of tyrants, they were tired of generals, they were tired of war, they were tired of being bossed around, they were tired of criminality, and they wanted an opportunity. They wanted to live free, and they wanted to do whatever they could do without being in a caste system. And that's the story of all of us. We all came from somewhere else. And why did my father come to Astoria? He was a very successful, I don't know, somebody may have gone to the Queen's Courthouse. He was a pretty famous judge by later on in life, and they named the courthouse after him, Queen's Boulevard. You see the statue thing. I know it because I keep telling the damn people to move the signs away from my father's statue. The bulletin for the day. Who's getting arrested? Well, but anyway, so he was a very successful, graduated from Fordham, and they brought him into a law firm in Manhattan, in the Woodward building, where I happen to have an office now, which is a beautiful building. If you've ever been to, you want to see a beautiful building, and you don't want to go to Venice or Florence or Rome, go to the Woodward building. It's all, you can only see that in Europe. It's just gorgeous. In any event, so he graduated in 28, just before the big fall, in 29, and big firm and whatnot, and he lived in Manhattan with my mother. He just got married, and in any event, 29 hit, and the world ended. There were no safeguards as we have today. People were on their own. There was no Social Security. There wasn't really anything unless you had a family that had some money that could help you. So it was a terrible time. And he couldn't get a job as a lawyer, so he got a job in a bank. This happens to be a Chase Manhattan Bank building. I think it was the Bank of Manhattan then, J.P. Morgan or something like that. You got a job in a bank. If you wanted to get a good job during the Depression, try to get a job in a bank or as a teacher, because that was the only guaranteed income that you could get. Anyhow, he came to Astoria and he saw Ditmars Boulevard. And Ditmars Boulevard was the end of a train. And he said, you know what? I think I'm going to open a law office here and start practicing. Now, this is before I was born, obviously. This was in 1929 or 1930. And if you've been to Ditmars Boulevard, they said that there were 9 banks or 10 banks here. Well, there are, between 23rd Avenue and Ditmars Boulevard, there are 9 banks. And you would think that God knows what money there must be here, but it's just middle-class people. And it's a great area. And my father said that this is wonderful. But the problem was, as time went on, gangs developed throughout this area particularly. It had the highest juvenile delinquency area in the country, they said, but it was one of the highest in it. Because you had projects that were new built, and you had different ethnic groups fighting each other, Irish, Italians, and Germans, and whatnot. They had nothing else to do, apparently, and it was a pretty bad area. So in 1948, the civic associations of the area honored my father, collected $1,500 because he was doing a lot on his own, helping people try to adjust. He took that $1,500 and said, we have to do something about juvenile delinquency, and he started the Boys and Girls Club of Queens, which you'll see on 21st Street, and thousands of young boys and girls have gone through there and helped change their lives. Okay? So that became a beacon of hope for this whole area. That was they finally built it in 1950. And it was a wonderful thing. So he was very much devoted to trying to get kids away from juvenile delinquency. And as I went into college and law school, I worked with gangs, bringing them off the street. I was with the youth group. Again, I'm very much involved in trying to keep kids out of trouble and trying to help them out in any way I can. And that was the tradition of our family. When I got into the council in 1974, it was a terrible place. There was corrupt, not corrupt, it was a corrupt government. Had something called a Board of Estimate, which was a terrible thing. And the council could not move a penny in the budget. The council was closest to the people, so we pretty much know what's right and what's wrong in the area. So I launched a campaign to get rid of the Board of Estimate, which happened. in the Supreme Court decision in 1989. And I became the first Speaker of the City Council in 1990. Now, you might recall, those of you who have read about it, because most of you are not old enough to know, that the city was in terrible, terrible financial straits. And we had a president, the whole headline of the Daily News is New York City dropped dead. It was very, very bad. So we had no money. And in 1989, the day that I took over as Vice Chairman of the City Council, I took over in 1986, but the day I took over as Speaker, where we finally had power without the Board of Adjustment to do something, there was a fellow by the name of Brian Watkins who was slaughtered on the subway with his family. It was absolutely awful. There were no cops. There were no cops. And the cops weren't accountable for anything, where they go. So even if they had cops, you didn't know where the hell they were, okay? People were fleeing the city, and I was just elected. The middle class, without a tax base, you don't have anything. You don't have good schools, you don't have good businesses, you don't have anybody that wants to stay here. They wanted to leave. One of the first persons that interviewed me, not interviewed, but demanded that I see him. I don't want to mention his name, but a pretty popular guy. 6,000 people work in his building. He says, if you don't make it safe for my employees to come into this city, to take the train safely, which they can't do now, he says, all I need is a phone. There weren't computers then. All I need is a phone. I'll go in Switzerland, open up tomorrow, and we're out of here. Right? So it was a terrible situation. So nobody can tell me how important public safety is to your businesses. You wouldn't be here if you were afraid to walk out there now and get mugged. You just wouldn't be here. You certainly wouldn't open a business here. You'd try to find a place safer. That was what I was faced with back in 1989. So we had to do something. And what we did is I started what's called the Safe City, Safe Streets, where we built up the criminal justice system. Not just cops and district attorneys and legal aid society, but also in every school an anti-drug program, because drugs were very prevalent and still are, but much worse at the time because kids had much freer access to it then than they have now. In any event, public safety, okay? My father, me, my son Peter Jr. now is chairman of the Public Safety Committee. It's not a coincidence. It's just because we know if you come to Ditmars Boulevard tonight at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll see people and families still walking around. They're safe. They don't mind. They're not worried about being crime. You know, there'll always be crime, but never the kind of indiscriminate crime that made it unsafe to walk around. So that's what we do, and that's what we try to do. And as far as small businesses are concerned, you know that. I don't have to tell you that. Small businesses are the backbone of the country. You know, that's where we make more money. That's where we have our employees and creating jobs. That's everything else. My father started, I believe, started one of the first small businesses in Astoria, Long Island City, with a small law office, which I still run. And that's Ditmars Boulevard, 31st Street. It's a little different than the one he opened because one of the things that you might recall, well, I don't think you recall that, in 1977, I became a council member in 1974. In 1977, I took the train from City Hall to the Astoria office, and there were a group of maybe 20 or 30 people in Nazi uniforms. And I thought they were making a movie right at the foot of my office, where the subway comes to an end. I thought they were making a movie, and they started giving out, boots, helmets, everything. It was just, I said, gee, what's going on here? They started giving out pamphlets saying, we have to finish Hitler's work. And I wouldn't say what this thing said, but it was with Jews and with blacks. And horrible stuff. Then I found out they were for real. They came to Astoria in 1960 because they believed that the new ethnic groups, particularly that were moving in at the time, the Greeks, that were supposedly anti-Jewish, which was not the case at all. Not the case at all. Anyway, I started a proceeding and got them eliminated. I started getting threats in the office, and in February of 1977, my office was blown up on the building. So we had to move from that location where my father was to where I am now. That also was the beginning of what I tried to do, if you want to, it's a very scary thought when you go to places in South America and around the world where people are being killed simply because they're in office. And so I started a situation where if you do become a notable person as a council member, as assemblyman, senate, and somebody wants to know where you live, they have to stay why. Okay? So it's just to try to protect, again, against lunatics that might be running around trying to do it. Basically, that's what I wanted to say, and basically I'm saying that thank God for the Civic Association my father started in 1932, which Arthur comes to, and we still have meetings on the first Tuesday of every other month. We'll be having a meeting on next Tuesday with the Parks Commission there, because besides public safety, what else is there? Transportation, parks, you got to have a quality of life. And there's nothing more important to me than leisure time for people to go to a park and to be able to relax. Astoria Park, if you haven't been there, you've got to go there. Peter's trying to get an arts exhibition where the oldest diving pool was, and make it a place where you can display things and have concerts and stuff like that. So we understand how important that is for a good community. And you don't have to know how this is changing by just taking a walk around here. I mean, I see things that I didn't see yesterday, just coming here tonight. You know, it's absolutely amazing. So I talked too long. No, I didn't. It's 14 minutes. Any questions?
Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Robert?
Peter, you remember what Queensboro Plaza used to be like?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Was that a nice neighborhood?
Some of your elected officials, like Carolyn Maloney, she got quite a few $1 million to spruce up this area. That's where the money is. The money is in, you know, federal government. They can allocate money. The state, the city council. What we do as much as we can is to try and put whatever money we can get and put it into something that makes a difference in life. Queens Plaza is the hub. It's a huge hub. As smart as people think I am, if I was so smart, I'd be a governor right now. But you know,
Close.
I want to build a hotel. This is like 4 years ago. Part of what we do is consulting. Oh no, there's too many hotels. Well, since that time, I think 6 hotels have been built, and every one of them is full. I mean, I can't understand it. You know how that particular thing would take off when it has taken off. So I mean, that tells you a lot about the area. I mean, there's not even parking for the hotels, and they're still full. I don't understand how they can do it. And they're great. You know, I've been there. Different people have fundraisers or whatever. I mean, it's wonderful. I forget what the question was. Oh, about the Queens Plaza.
No, how it changed. I mean, like, for example, years ago, I mean, there were prostitutes here, there were drug addicts, and people would come for that. That was actually a business, obviously, and not a good business, and the neighborhood wasn't considered a nice neighborhood. But what's the vision down the road you see? Now, I mean, we're just happy to have it cleaned up. But who can give us the vision for where we're going? Because this is unbelievable what's happening.
Well, probably people in business here that are doing business in Arthur would know, but as far as I can see, it's always an improvement. We're not really taking a step back in any of the critical areas that I see. I'm very concerned because the police force is going down. I mentioned accountability. What made it so different with Safe City, Safe Streets, which I did with Mayor Dinkins, I worked with 3 mayors very closely, was that when Giuliani came in, whether you like him or not, he made them accountable. Right. So that every cop, no matter where he or she was, had to know what they were doing, and if something was going up, if rape was going up, or burglary was going up, or whatever was going up, he wanted to know why. And every captain was accountable. Well, all of a sudden, even though we had fewer cops, you know, things started to be better. But we've gone down to the area now. We got 10,000 less than I put on, and I'm concerned that you don't want to see it slipping back into where we were.
Do you think that the police force was declined because of the camera lights and all these little security cameras?
Well, that helps, but basically it's accountability. You know, it's what are you doing and where are you and what's happening and why did this happen? You know, let's prevent it from happening again. It made a huge difference. It just made a huge difference.
So, maybe the economy is getting better.
Pardon?
The economy is getting better.
No,
So crime going down.
New York City is way ahead of the rest of the country. Okay, the rest of the country is. I campaigned for governor in all 62 counties back in 1998, and you can't believe how bad it was upstate New York. Places that I used to go to was my parents took me to the Catskills. It was the only place you could go to for vacations. It was, you know, it was wonderful. It's all gone. And the businesses that used to, cities, all beautiful cities in the state that used to thrive, the businesses are dead because they put malls up there, you know, miles away from the business sector. And you need malls here because we're so crowded and whatnot. And, you know, you need a place to go to besides sort of parent. But you don't really need what they did out there. And it's dying. and they blame New York City. They think we're taking all their money. They have no idea that we're giving them more money than we're getting back. So, yeah, the economy is in trouble. What's going on today is outrageous. If you want to buy a copy of my book, which is called Learning to Govern, I've already sold 11 copies, so I'm going. I'm saying in the book, I'm sorry, I lecture quite a bit now and in different colleges. And what I'm saying is that you can't have a government run when they don't talk to one. You just can't do that. To get Safe Cities, Safe Streets at a time when we were dead, I had to raise a tax. And the only way I could raise the tax is I promised we would give the money back in 7 years. I said, who's going to believe that? I said, well, we're going to do that. And we did. We gave the tax back. It took 7 years to rebuild the economy. But there doesn't seem to be any reason for them to get together in Congress. It's crazy. And that's a problem. It's a real problem.
I've also seen, crime has come down, but I've seen that the walls have become more colorful with graffiti. I mean, what's...
Well, Peter's a bug. So is I.
But all that money that we spent on the BQE, I see graffiti, like, it goes down to like 69th Street. Just,
yeah, the problem is, obviously, with the lack, with 10,000 less cops, you don't have guys patrolling the way we used to have it. But what Peter has started up again now is a citizens group. You just have to call. If you see something, they give you a number to call, and if you're registered with the precinct, you respond.
So, excuse me, so you had an underlying change in the way crime was dealt with, and it made it safer for people, and you created a better place for kids so they could be off the street, and that made it better for families to come here from Ireland and Greece and Italy and everywhere else, and the culture here became very positive. That seems to be an underlying theme, making it better for families.
Yeah, and if you live here, I mean, I came from a rent-controlled apartment house back when my father first came here to Queens. And I live in a two-family house now, which is a half a block away from where I was born. I go away for a weekend, and somebody come in to watch my cat. They go away, we'll do the same thing for them. Whether it was in the apartment house or whether it's in a private house, people here get along with one another. You know, and it's a wonderful experience. You could get along, I don't care what you are, what color you are, where you came from, what religion you are, just take care of yourself, take care of your neighbor, and take care of your property. You'll never have a problem in any place that I know of. Never mind Astoria, Long Island City, but any place.
Do you see that we're doing enough now to make it better for the kids or any other segment that is important to you?
Well, some of these programs that I told you, part of my job, my after-school job, was bringing gangs off the streets. Part of the cuts that are going to take place now are all these after-school programs, which is, you know...
That's terrible.
To me, it's very frightening. And there's just no reason for it. The way we saw... why don't they look at what we did in the city of New York? You know, look at what we did in the city of New York. We consolidated. We got rid of a lot of stuff that wasn't working. We made things accountable. You know, we did pass a tax, but we gave it back. I mean, you can do things if you reasonably, you know, thought about it. No one gave the city any hope. No one gave the city any hope. We're going bankruptcy. And you know, so there are ways of doing it. I'm awfully glad.
I promised Mr. Vallone that he could attend an important meeting for a mutual friend of ours, Tony Maloney, and so I'm going to just take 2 more minutes.
He's running to take my son's place in the council. I'm very concerned with term limits, which is a disaster. Everybody has to leave after 2 terms. Can you imagine in your businesses, whatever you do, if they say you got 8 years and leave? You know, I mean, that's crazy. And so you don't have the institution of memory. I'm talking to people like the new councilman. They don't know what happened in 1974. They don't know what happened in 1989. They don't know how bad the city was then. And they think that, you know, oh, that's a whole other story. If you ever have an opportunity to do away with term limits, please do so.
I really appreciate your being here. Thank you. How many citations did you, while you were a city council member, did you dispense in the course of your career?
Quite a few.
Quite a few. We don't have citations here, but
You have gold
but
bars from the
we
thing
have
downstairs?
we have a letter. We have a letter which I would like to read. This is a community leadership resolution, and I'll just take a minute to read this. And we appreciate so much of what you've done for Long Island City to get us to where we are now. By resolution of the incorporators and Board of Directors of Long Island City Astoria Chamber of Commerce Incorporated, in recognition of your exemplary career in public service as a New York City council member who has dedicated himself to the improved quality of life for all citizens of New York City, and especially for Astoria, Long Island City, and to recognize the results of your leadership as the first Speaker of the City Council of the City of New York, and to recognize the commitments and sacrifices to achieve the highest standards of public and private service, and to acknowledge that as a professional member of the business community, you have given your time and considerable talent to guide and to improve the business environment for all small business owners, and to thank you for your vision and foresight to encourage and support the formation and growth of the Long Island City Astoria Chamber of Commerce. The incorporators and Board of Directors hereby present you with this community leadership resolution. It is hereby resolved that Honorable Peter F. Vallone Sr. is a lifelong honorary member of the Long Island City Astoria Chamber of Commerce, hereby recorded and presented February 27, 2013, signed by the incorporators.
Thank you very much.
Will be presented in a larger framed version.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely, because we just have a new logo, so we're in the process of making that logo available for things that we do with it. So thank you so much.
I will return this glass someplace.
Thank you so much.